Hello and welcome. My name is Ramses, and of Kings and Men have finally updated their Steam page, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. Full disclosure, I own this game. I've also reviewed it and recommended it. I've been following the development of the game since, I was one of the original supporters back when it was just an idea several years ago in another development team. Some people would categorize me as a fanboy. Some people would categorize me as a hater. I don't really think I'm either of those. I just try to be honest and try to actually talk about the merits of the product and its development so far, unlike what you might find on Steam, for example. Um, so, anyways, let's talk about this new Steam page. So first of all, though, there was a change in the development team about some 6 months ago or more. I think 7 months or something. It was in January, and it really shook the whole game and the community when it happened. And right after the event, there was a need to kind of change the Steam page because there was a lot of misleading information on it, and it was promising things or it was listing things in its features that frankly just weren't in the game. And that's problematic, of course, because that's false advertising, right? Telling your potential customer that you have something in a product, when they buy it, you don't have it. That's false advertising, and the situation has remained like this since, as I said, since forever, right? Since the release date, which is since yesterday, it's actually a year ago, and that's not acceptable. Right, it's been going on for months upon months, and it can't take that long a time to simply change a Steam page. It can't take a year. That's simply, too crazy. Um, so anyway, I was among one of the players that drafted and then made this petition on change.org, amend of Kings and Men Steam store page, together with Yak and also Uki, where we really, just made it clear that we rethink that is gross negligence, and that the marketing company managing the advertising and marketing of Kings and Men, which is Green Man Gaming, really should have done something about this a hell of a long time ago. So anyway, but now it's finally here. And let's take a look at it, because there are some changes that you might not have noticed if you haven't been following the development for as long as time as I have. So, first of all, here's a little bit about early access. This first paragraph, nothing really new here. The second one, though, approximately how long will this game be in early access? Of Kings and Men is planned to release the final version and leave early access after 1.5 to 2 years. Now, I presume that means 1.5 to 2 years from now, and not from when it just became early access, which means it should come out in 1.5 years from now or 2 years from now, which means there's still lots of time before the final version is there. How is the full version planned to differ from the early access version? The list here is only 4 items, which means they've really cut down the number of things that they want to implement for the final version, and it was a little bit unclear how much they were going to cut and how much they were going to keep. And Pocus and the community manager said that they weren't excluding everything. Well, by only including this, I feel that in some sense of the word they've also excluded a lot. And so I don't think we should assume that there's going to be anything more than what we'll see here. At least, when this is in, the game will be advertised as complete, and then it will be put out, and then the rest, I don't know if that will be DLC or something, which I hope not. Anyway, the combat system will be extended to feature horses, throwing weapons, as well as siege engines. Nothing surprising there. Players will be able to design their own weapons by combining different parts. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the previous development team also had this, but it was in the preview roadmap that was showed several months ago that crafting was going to be part of it. It's also going to be interesting to see if that will also be part of the economical system in the strategic map. We'll see. The game will hold tournaments and competitions with a ranking system. This is a new one. Right, this didn't exist before, so it sounds like this game is going a little bit more in the e-sporty direction of things, and I think that might be a development caused by all the events constantly happening by the community and the pressure from the community to try and implement these kinds of things, and also just the development we've seen in medieval war games recently after what was it? Was it Budapest, where Mount Warband, kind of entered the esports scene, and the fact that Bannerlord will also have a ranking system, it's kind of changed this whole area, and so it looks like Okam wants to follow suit with that. I'm personally happy about that. I think that's great. Players will work together to capture castles, establish diplomatic relations to other player factions, implement a feudal hierarchy, and run a player-driven economy. Now, what the hell does this mean? This means the Epic, basically. They've replaced the Epic with this. And the name for it, as a work in progress name, is the strategic map. Now, if you don't know the Epic very well, there was basically going to be 3 layers of the Epic. There was going to be the overview map, where you would have like the macro stuff managed, where you would move armies and manage cities, and where you'd initiate battles and sieges. And then there would be the middle layer, where when there wasn't a battle going on, you would walk around on a pretty open and large map, where you could interact with the local area and chat with various players and stuff like that. And then there was the oh, I forgot to include this part. Upgrade thieves and fighters mercenaries with different factions. Doesn't really matter, but the third layer was going to be the battles themselves. And so if 2 armies moved on the overview map into proximity of each other, it would initiate a battle, which would start 24 hours later or so in prime time, where real players could sign into the 2 armies and then make up the soldiers for the army. And what this basically means is we will have 2 of the 3 layers, which is the battles and the overview map, but we will not have, at least I don't think we will have, the 3rd layer, which is sort of the open world, running around in a medieval landscape, ordering your AI to do kinds of things. I don't think we're going to get that. The development team has, as far as I know, said that they weren't excluding it, but I think this is a pretty clear signal. We shouldn't expect it to come. So that's it. But we'll still have a lot of the other things. Now, I really want some more details about what each of these things mean. So capture castles, what does that include? Establish diplomatic relations. Is that a completely free diplomatic system like it was in the spiritual predecessor of Strategas? Or is it more of a system like you'd say in Europa Universalis, where you kind of restrict the players? Or, I mean, what kind of diplomatic relation systems is this? Feudal hierarchy, what does this mean? I mean, is it enforced? Is it incentivized? Is it just suggested? What? And what will the economy actually consist of? What will upgrading thieves do? And so on and so forth. So, but I understand that they can't really put in any more details here. That makes sense. What is the current state of the early access version? Well, as it says, the combat system and the various game modes are there, as well as an early implementation of the war system called raid mode. Now they call it the war system. I'm not sure. This is also another word for the strategic map. You can really sense that they don't really have a name that they're happy with about it. So, will the game be priced differently during and after early access? Yes, the game will increase in price after early access. This is a new one. I'm 90% sure that's a new one at least. The game is already somewhat pricey with what is the cost of it? I think it's 25 euros. I don't see it right now. Maybe I'm just being blind, but I mean it's not cheap. And increasing in price, that's interesting. I assume it's a way to make people buy the product now. But we'll see. And then they say they are allowing players to participate in the development process and to brainstorm with the team. The problem is there's just not enough players to really brainstorm with, as far as I can tell. The forum is the first stop. Well, there is nobody on the forum. That's the problem. Most of the communication with the devs actually happen on Discord, and they do have open ears to what you have to say and what you have to suggest, within reason, of course. But Pogo-san, the community manager, is really active and tends to get back to you. Now there's a second, here down here is the def frames if you want some more information. There's really a lot of it in there. Down here there's some more information. First off, there's some kind of narrative, I suppose, intro, which sort of reinforces the idea that this game is going along the more dark and gritty path. The lighting has changed, and the wording has changed. The introduction, or like the main menu screen, has changed. So yeah, it's sort of the feel has been getting a little bit different. Key features: fight alongside loyal comrades. Our featured strategic map allows you to experience a real-time medieval war campaign set in a persistent world. This is the strategic map, and now this time they are calling it the strategic map. Now you can gather your clan, plan your attack, and brace yourself against the enemy. What does this mean? This means that the strategic map is not there yet, but there are some of the features of the strategic map that you can access right now. And it says join a team and work your way up the ranks as you battle it out with up to 150 other players in a fight. Learn the ropes, and someday you might even try your hand at leading your own army. This basically means that, or to give you guys some more context about this, it's because right now there's something called the raid battle mode, which allows you to initiate a battle against a fief, where you then sign up your soldiers and then fight it, and if you win you gain some loot. You don't actually win the village itself. And this is the same kind of battle system that's going to be used for the strategic map. So making raid was a step towards making the strategic map work. And before the strategic map itself will be here, then we can play raid, which is a kind of a precursor to the whole thing. And that's basically what all this means. Also, notice that it says now 150 other players. Seems like they've scaled down a little bit of the initial goal to go for 200 or more players in a single fight. But 150 is still a hell of a lot, and I don't think they've made the game, actively worse in terms of optimization or anything. It's the way it's always been, and the engine is the same, and everything's the same. It's just that they're just rolling back some of the previous slightly optimistic statements. Get involved in dynamic combat against other players. Experience a realistic combat system based on the study of historical... Oh my god, can I figure this out? Come on. Historical European martial arts and medieval manuscripts. Fight with a fast-paced, intuitive combat system that will leave your heart pounding. Okay. The problem is every game can say well, pretty much every game, like War of the Roses or Mordhau or Life is Feudal, I don't know, any one of them, Chivalry, Bannerlord, can say the exact same statement and leaves the potential customer just as confused. What they really should be saying is that Okam uses a mouse control, mount and blade style-ish, more intuitive combat system that's easy for noobs to get into and with a lot of depth for the pros. That's basically what they should be saying, in my opinion. Meet and chat with fellow players in our lobby. Socialize and get to know one another by choosing to play in fun modes or risk your life by venturing into the wilderness in search of adventure. This part is not here yet. I mean, I've been seeing the dev frames and such that they want to include some kind of wilderness area outside the lobby city, which is basically like a neutral city where you just start. So I'm not sure why they're including it in the key features. I believe key features, I think that should already be there. Anyways, hone your skills, level up in combat, and choose which stat points to upgrade. This might give the wrong impression that you actually become better as you level up. That's not really the case. After a various amount of tries where first you would start at a low level and actually be weaker than everybody, they chose the customization system to be simply that you start out completely balanced with 15 in all skills, where the lowest skill in 1 and 30 is the highest, and then as you gain levels you can customize yourself. So that means you when you gain level you can choose to be slower but stronger, for example, or you can choose to be bulkier and have more HP but give less damage, for example. But you won't actually be better off. There's always a trade-off, and that means a new player, if you discount the skill difference, will be at the same footing as the veterans, or not quite, because there's also the equipment, but they'll be a lot closer, and frankly I find that to be much better. Unlock rewards, unlock new gear from full plate to two-handed sword. Create and customize your own unique warrior, stand out and make them remember you. This is something to do with the loot chests, I believe, that they've implemented. Some people were afraid about micro transactions. They've made that clear that's not going to be there. It's not going to be pay to win. So what does stand out to me with this sentence is this: full plate armor. Full plate armor. So far the game has strictly been keeping itself to the 13th century. Now 13th century does include some plated armor, mostly coat of plates, which is basically, let me just show you, coat of, it's there you go, something like this. It's basically like a leather breastplate, so to speak, but with like plates of metal on the inside, which protects the wearer. And that's as far as plate armor has gone in the 13th century. But if you go to full plate armor, or let's say transitional, yeah, spell, this is what you're looking at. Right, let me see if I can find a better picture. Something like this. Okay, and when they say full plate armor, now there's a few fantasy selections here, so I mean this is obviously fantasy, but this, I believe that's Gothic plate or Milanese, I can never tell the difference. Or this, I mean these are far later armors. The 13th century knight is basically one that uses mail and coat of plates, for example. I mean something like this, you know, the classic Templar knight gear, you know. As you'll notice, there's probably an accaton or some padding underneath, and there's a mail coat, including over the legs. I don't remember what that's called. And then there's a surcoat on top to show your heraldry and also provide additional padding, or something like this, which I think was made by my friend Sigbert. And once you move to the 14th century, that changes. It changes quite rapidly, in fact. As you can see, this is a lot more plate armor and a lot more high medieval style. So you'll notice the poleaxe and the weapons are different, war hammers and stuff like that. Also, the famous English longbowman is from the 14th century. Basically, the 100 Years' War was in the 14th century, and there's a real there's a lot of development in weapons and armor at that time, and you know, that changes the game quite a bit. If they decide to go away from 13th century to 14th century, or even open it up to Renaissance with guns and everything, that will completely change the feel of the game. Now, there's not that big a difference between 13th and 14th. I prefer the 13th because I'm more of a, you know, the classical Templar style knight than the 14th century guy, something like this, or like the guy I showed you before, something like this. But the 14th century has a lot of similarities, to be frank. But it's going to feel a lot more Renaissance-y, and this here might be a clue that they are not that interested in staying with the 13th century, and maybe they're not even that interested in staying historically accurate. The previous development team, especially Simke from the previous development team, spent a lot of time making sure that every single piece of equipment, every weapon, every shield, every piece of armor would be historically accurate, and he would find sources for them, and he would map the sources onto the weapons and armor, and he'd try to balance them in a way that they'd make sense within the historical perspective, and so on and so forth. And the previous dev team has shown no commitment to do the same thing. Or sorry, the current development team has shown no commitment to do the same thing. But we'll see. Maybe they'll decide to stick with the 13th century. So anyway, I think that's it. So let's all hope the strategic map gets released soon, and some more people start playing this game. It's about bloody time. See ya.